No Time to Die. Tell us about it. What can you tell us about the film?
So at the end of the last film, we see that Bond had retired. He's thrown away his career at MI6. And at the beginning of this film, he's on permanent vacation in Italy with his girlfriend, Madeline Swan. The relationship is getting closer, and she is pressuring him to put to rest the killing of his earlier girlfriend. And just as he is doing that, things go terribly wrong. And he thinks that she has betrayed him, and he cuts her out of his life. And then he goes to Jamaica, and he's on permanent vacation in Jamaica. But there's a scientist who has discovered this DNA-based nanobot weapon. The scientist has gone missing. And so his old CIA pal, Felix Leiter, comes to him and says, hey, we got to go find this guy. And so he says, sure, why not? And that takes us off on the adventure.
Now, I haven't seen the film. I have seen the previous Bond films. First one was Casino Royale, which I really liked. I thought it was great. It was a new direction for Bond. I really liked Daniel Craig. I liked the brutality of the character that he brought. I liked the rawness. I liked the vulnerability that he had. This is sort of the most vulnerable we've seen Bond. He gets hurt. He bleeds when you cut him. And I really liked all that stuff. And then the next few movies proceeded to take all of that stuff out and go back to Bond as indestructible killing machine. Quantum of Solace, the next one he was in, is a mess. It's got a gobbledygook plot that makes no sense. It's all over the place, and in general, it's just very confusing. Skyfall kind of brings it back. That's when I think Sam Mendes came on board and really kind of got the act together, and they brought the story back, and some great people in it. There's a lot of great stuff for Judi Dench to do in that film. Got a little Albert Finney at the end. People have compared it to Home Alone with the booby traps and everything that happened, but it's fun, and the story is good, and it's got an emotional impact. The plot, again, is this weird kind of gobbledygook where a guy intends to be imprisoned, and some of the logic of these films, it's always been insane. The recent films have had less insanity in the plot than some of the other ones, and kind of less ridiculousness, but, still insane, weird plots nonetheless. And then Spectre, which I thought looked really good, also didn't make a hell of a lot of sense, and there was a lot of big action set pieces that felt like they were written before the movie was even, the rest of the movie was written. It was just kind of like, how to, let's get a plot together to tie together these big set pieces. I like the Blofeld character, but I hate this, like, he's Bond's half brother and he's the author of all your pain, and it's one master organization. It's kind of like, we read comic books too, guys. I understand, what you're going for. My question for you is, does this continue the same storyline? So Spectre is still involved, right?
Yes, it does continue the same storyline, and it attempts to wrap up that storyline as well as the one from Casino Royale. And the plot is rather convoluted. After they go to find this scientist, they find out that there's this convention of Spectre, and everybody from Spectre is going to be there in Cuba. So they go there. He gets an assistance from a new CIA agent who is this young woman who's great. She's in the film for a few minutes, kicks ass, and then leaves, but she's great.
That's Anna de Armas, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, he
And
starred with her in Knives Out,
Yeah.
and she's wonderful.
Yeah, she's great in this. Then all of a sudden, and I hope I'm not giving too much away here, the DNA weapon is released. It's supposed to have triggered it can be targeted because it's DNA based. So it's supposed to have targeted Bond, but something goes wrong, and instead it targets all of the Spectre people there. and so Spectre is involved, and so they think that Blofeld is in charge of all of this. So he's in prison, and he reappears, played by
Christoph Waltz.
Christoph Waltz, thank you. But then it turns out that he's not the one who did that. It was somebody else, and that person turns out to be Rami Malek as Lucifer Safin. Great name. So you actually have kind of two villains here, but Rami Malek doesn't appear until more than halfway through the film, and when he does, he's very quiet, and he appears to be quietly menacing, but he's just not. And so forget about the plot. You get the action sequences, which are great, but the thing is, the emotional part of Bond and the vulnerability that you mentioned earlier is really enhanced in this movie. That is what made this film so good for me, is not the plot points, but the emotional points.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it. I feel like it's getting pretty good reviews right now, and I've heard it's a pretty good send off for Daniel Craig. There's a lot of speculation as to who the next Bond is going to be. I think Craig is one of my favorite Bonds. I think he's probably the most human Bond in some way. Sean Connery was just kind of like this blunt, super masculine, misogynist.
Well, and you never saw him doubting himself.
No, not once.
Yeah.
And the same thing, you know, and then you had sort of the tongue in cheek of Roger Moore.
Yeah.
I really kind of don't count George Lazenby. He only did one film,
Poor guy.
and in which he, you know, he gets married, which is kind of dumb for Bond to do, because then he stops being
That's
James
straight
Bond.
from the books, by the way.
That is, yes, I know that's from the, and I think Casino Royale got back to the books, and I also think that was a kind of thing where they had lost the rights to it for a while,
Yeah.
and then, you know, because it
There
was
was a spoof actually made of it in the 60s with a
right.
bunch of different people in it.
Yeah, it was like David Niven, Woody
David Niven
Allen,
was, yeah.
Ursula Andress was also in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, bringing it back to, and then, you know, the biggest difference was they used poker instead of baccarat, however you say that name. Nobody plays that game in this country, so we don't know how to say it. But it's I thought it was great, and I don't know what they're going to do next. But I really kind of wish they had kept that initial direction more. I mean, in Casino Royale, my biggest complaint is that Mads Mikkelsen's villain is a bit ridiculous. Like, he's got like a bleeding eye and he has asthma, and it's like, dude, just pick one Malek, you know, just pick one affliction. And you know, with Rami Malek in this film, I like Rami Malek. I think he's a wonderful actor, but I just kept picturing like Mr. Robot up there.
And he's not got a lot to do, you know. He has this great secret island, kind of like Dr. No, where he's going to manufacture this DNA weapon on a huge scale so he can basically kill everybody in the world. Talk about your ridiculous plot points. But, you know, he just doesn't have a whole lot to do. And, you know, they didn't use him very well.
So, all in all, would you recommend No Time to Die for someone who hasn't seen it?
Yes, I would, whether you're a Bond fan or not. And I did see it in the theater. I like seeing action movies in the theater because you get that big screen and you get the big sound, and that really kind of enhances the experience, I think.